This is Lac Qui Parle Church. This is a beacon sitting on the prairie landscape that has been part of the community for over 100 years. This video highlights some history and memories of this wonderful landmark. We hope you enjoy the journey, so let's begin. The congregation came to life officially on March the 27th, 1905, when the first church constitution was read at a meeting held on the O.P. Hanson homestead. The congregation of Lac Qui Parle was incorporated in the Northwest Territories as part of the Macon Parish. O.B. Saunders was a missionary from Madagascar and the first pastor. Church services were held in individual homes.
Travel to these services was by wagon, buggy, horse, or by foot in the summer months, by stone boat with a box to sit on in the sleighs during winter months. Some people, such as C.E. Kettleson, one of the founding members of the church, had to travel as far as 14 miles to attend church. Later that same year, Saskatchewan was incorporated as a province of Canada, and Sir Walter Scott was elected the first premier, and Regina became the capital. Bror Anderson donated 4 acres of land for a cemetery in 1905 after the death of his daughter, Elizabeth Lee. The first registered burial was on May 18, 1905. Lot 24, Jessie Bertine Gilbertson, age 16, who was moved from the homestead where she was originally buried to Lac Qui Parle. On the north graveyard after the second row was a hitching post area for the horses and carriage.
This is the foyer of the Lac Qui Parle Church, which has a map of the graveyard. Using church documentation, the map was researched by Paul Davies and documented over a 3-year period. It lists all 225 graves, including 26 unmarked graves, which were identified and now have grave markers. In the bell tower, the wall is marked, indicating the bell was installed in 1915, but little else is known about it. A small little fact: Harry Peterson, faithfully for decades, would ring this bell at the start of each church service. In 1907, Florida School was built. Church services were held there. Church services were only held in the Norwegian language, as the Lutheran pastors of that day received their education and training in that language. The first congregational wedding was held in 1908, and it was Seaver Stu Flotten and Tracy Johnson who were married. On July the 3rd, 1912, the decision to build a church was passed by the congregation, and $1,000 was needed to be raised. Financing was by subscription of the 166 church members. On December the 10th, 1912, the Sunday school was established. The first teachers were Hans P. Peterson and O.T. Dahl. On December 6, 1913, the church board decided a parochial school should be taught for 3 months during the summer. Teachers were paid $25 a month. The school started in June of 1914 in the basement.
And this started years of Luther Leagues, vacation Bible schools, and Sunday schools. My wife's favorite memory was Vacation Bible School being taught by Della Peterson, where she made this fantastic paper mache keepsake pencil holder.
January the 13th, 1914, a decision to build a church 28 by 40 feet with a chancel 16 by 16 feet with a room 6 feet by 12 feet on each side of the chancel. The basement of the church would be 5 feet deep and have a gravel stone foundation. The digging of the basement of the church was started in 1913. Volunteers from the congregation hauled rocks, cement, gravel. Rock was split by hand using sledgehammers to make slams for the foundation walls. The basement was then covered with a roof. The total cost of construction to that point was $250. On June the 22nd of 1914, a Mushka architect presented the plans for a church to Reverend Fussell. This marked the beginning of the actual construction. The congregation paid $40 for the plans. It was decided that the church was to be built by Loritz Bergam. In the spring of 1915, after the money was raised, lumber was hauled by horse and wagon from Macomb, which was approximately 54 kilometers away. The altar ring, the pulpit, and baptismal font were all made by hand by O.P. Peterson.
Oliver Flata was given the job of being the finishing carpenter. The pews were ordered from Globe's Furniture in Waterloo, along with a hand-pumped organ, a cold stove for heat, and lanterns for light. Globe Furniture was known internationally for its ornate and intricate church pews and altars that were carved from wood and delivered throughout Canada and to countries as far away as South Africa. By 1915, the church was completed and ready for use. The first service, the original service, was held by Pastor Thor Fussum, and confirmations and baptisms were celebrated. Pastor Fussum passed away the same year and is the only pastor to both serve and be buried at Lac Qui Parle. The initial service established a tradition that held for many years that men sat on the south side of the church and the women sat on the north side with the children. Lac Qui Parle joined the Torquay parish in 1921, and then the parish consisted of 3 churches: Torquay, Hammer Bromhead, and Lac Qui Parle. In 1930, a significant change took place. At the direction of the Synod, church services were conducted in English to portray a more Canadian image.
There were 23 pastors that served at Lac Qui Parle Church. Reverend O. Saunders, Reverend E. Norsum, Reverend T. Fussum, Reverend C. Statham, Reverend T. Langley, Reverend H. Waldall, Reverend H. Mosby, Reverend C. Hoverston, Reverend O. Tullifson, Reverend A. Odland, Reverend A. Haugen, Student O. Haugen, Reverend J. Precht, Reverend J. Stoley, Intern P. Matthiessen, Student V. Hawes, Dr. S. Jacobson, Reverend R. Day, Reverend L. Gilbertson, Reverend N. Harmon, Reverend E. Headland, Reverend F. Westerhold, Reverend C. Johnson.
Religion had a significant impact on the settling of Saskatchewan. As each new area was opened to settlement, pioneers faced the difficult task of building homes and communities from the ground up. Pioneer life revolved around providing the basic necessities of existence in a northern wilderness: food, shelter, fuel, and clothing. Pioneering life was integral to family life. As settlements grew, communities organized congregations and built churches. The church became a social as well as a religious center. It was a place of community, socials, and suppers, of Christmas entertainments, of Sunday school parties, and neighborhood gatherings. The Frontier Church provided the first strong social bond in new communities. From these, volunteerism grew, and the volunteerism was passed down from generation to generation.
This is a picture of Evelyn Hanson, the church organist. Beautiful music was played by Evelyn faithfully every Sunday for decades. This is a list of the World War II soldiers that served from the Lac Qui Parle community. Menford Peterson, Palmer Peterson, Melvin Lee, Helmer Flotta, Percy Flotta, Henry Peterson, and Palmer Hanson.
Tor Lee held the office of treasurer from 1908 until his death in 1951, which was a period of 43 years. I believe, but I'm not certain, that Henry Peterson picked up the role after that, and he held the position until the church closed. We particularly wish to pay special tribute to those in our community who improved the well-being of the church by giving of their time and talents and gifts. One such group was the Lac Qui Parle Choir.
Recently, the Satter family also donated the wedding dress of their grandma, Tanita Satter. She and her husband are buried here in the graveyard, and they were members of the church for decades. We thank them for sharing this memory with us. Part of some history that we have learned over the years, this room on the north side of the church was apparently originally the casket room, and as years went by, it became the Sunday school room, and now it has been converted into a washroom that was done only a few years ago by Dallas and Dale Peterson. This is the 75th anniversary sign, which was made by Cyril van Weinberg.
The 2 candlesticks on the altar were a gift from George and Jim Tangen, brothers that both attended church here and are buried in the churchyard. The 2 candles symbolize the light of Jesus Christ going out into the world. The cross on the altar was given by the Peterson family following the death of Annes H. Peterson. The Bible case on the altar and the Norwegian Bible was a gift from Reverend Langley in 1920. The altar flowers were given by Elaine Maximu.
Another gift was from the Frank Buck family. They donated the electric organ, which we still use in the church for special occasions.
This organ was given to Lac Qui Parle Church by Dallas Peterson. The organ dates from approximately the same time as when the church was built.
Throughout the church, there are many different pieces of memorabilia that have been donated by Lac Qui Parle church members over the years. Another one of those items is a picture that was painted, I think maybe even drawn by pencil, I'm not sure, by Mardell Peterson. Another one of our very talented Lac Qui Parle church members is Robert Satter, and he has done an outstanding drawing as well of Lac Qui Parle Church. This poem was written by Kevin Emery, and it was written in memory of his father who passed away a few years ago, and these are his thoughts around his dad who's buried in the graveyard here at Lac Qui Parle. It goes like this: no pillars, coal skyscrapers to shoulder through, sliver slipped into prairie current, arrested by winter in a dry stubble, you speak in unfamiliar tongues, you dig lutefisk with fingers chapped and calloused. How is it your promised land, crabgrass sanctuary, wears its holiness next to the ledger? I should remove my shoes, I should sweep the stairs, I should lean the shovels along the north wall. Memory sits like a clump of soil in the pit of your stomach to slow our forgetting. We've scratched the names into the face of moonlit reefs, how great thou must have been, dinghy lashed with weeds to the harvest, adrift aloft. Over the years at Lac Qui Parle, there are many memories, and this cupboard holds a few of these. These artifacts were donated by former members of the congregation. Of particular note is the saucers on the second shelf that were part of the dish sets used throughout the life of the congregation. In addition to that, there are cups and plates commemorating various anniversaries of the church. Of course, I could not resist adding an ufta cup that symbolizes the Norwegian heritage and all the many great cups of coffee that were shared throughout the many celebrations that were held at the church. As you can see from this video, that there are so many different gifts and talents and treasures that are located throughout this whole history of Lac Qui Parle Church. And I believe that my uncle, Harry Peterson, has summed up this whole story around how the church was formulated and how it has evolved throughout all the years. And I'd like to read that poem to you that he has written. To western prairies men were led to file and prove up a homestead. Some came with families, some alone, to plow the ground and pick the stone. Building a shack and lots to do, it's you help me and I'll help you. The families grew and the country's rules said now that you'd have to build some schools. Each district picked a central spot, drove to Macun, lumber was bought. These buildings soon stood on their place. The children started their school days. As church had been part of their lives, they got together with their wives. They organized the Ladies' Aid to build a church. The plans were made. Some years went by, the structure grew. In 1915, they all knew, with all in place and soon complete, a tall landmark and a place to meet. A salute to all the pioneers, helping build this country all these years. Things did not always go their way, but they pressed on without delay. No transportation then to share, the girls could not get anywhere. A lucky thing it was that way, or we'd all be single yet today. The progress made from then till now was started with the horse and plow. Let's give pioneers a big thank you for what they did for me and you. With 75 years now past and gone, Lac Qui Parle congregation carries on. May God bless all who came this day to celebrate in this memorable way. This brings us to the end of our journey through so many memories. We hope you have enjoyed this journey with us. This video was created by Val and Paul Davies in October of 2021.